Hello everybody, thank you very much for joining me today for another Twilight Zone video in my Twilight Zone ranking series, where I rank every episode of the original Twilight Zone from my least favorite to my favorite. Today I'm going to be talking about number 2 on the list, The Midnight Sun, written by Rod Serling and directed by Anton Leader. This is a season 3 episode, and as always there will be spoilers, and wow, I'm all the way down to number 2. So, ever since I first saw The Midnight Sun, it has always been one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes. It's always made a big impression on me. I think that's because, at least for me, I feel this episode as much as I watch it, if that makes sense. The Midnight Sun is so intense. I almost feel like I'm there when I watch this episode. I actually started sweating the last time I watched it, and Lois Nettleton gives a great performance. There's something about her that just draws me in. She's almost hypnotic in this episode, and Betty Gard is great in support as well. The episode also feels very cinematic, and the direction of Anton Leader is really great. This is also a very visually stunning episode with some very inventive scenes. This is also, in its own way, one of the scariest Twilight Zone episodes because of the premise and the way the episode ends. Just a great all-time episode all the way around, in my opinion. So when this episode starts, we learn that the Earth's orbit is messed up and it is slowly falling into the sun. We are introduced to our main characters, Norma, who is an artist, and her landlady, Mrs. Bronson. It turns out that they live in a mostly abandoned apartment as everyone is leaving, trying to find a safer place to go where it's cooler, I suppose. So these ladies are presented with a lot of challenges. There isn't much food or water, and power is very limited. There's also a radio announcement that the police are basically gone and that you must protect yourself from crime. So this whole situation is very bad, and the episode does a great job of making the viewer feel the despair. So as it gets hotter and hotter, the women seem to get weaker and weaker, and I get more and more tired watching this episode because it's so intense. As if these ladies don't have enough problems, eventually a looter comes by, and after Mrs. Bronson mistakenly opens the door for him, the looter forces his way in and grabs Norma's gun. He drinks their water, but eventually says he is sorry. He explains that he is losing it because it's so hot, and because he lost his wife and daughter recently. And then he eventually leaves, and I thought this scene was very well done. But somehow from here, things get even more intense. Norma shows Mrs. Bronson one of her paintings of a waterfall. Mrs. Bronson says she feels cool before collapsing, and Norma just sits there and watches as the thermometer breaks and the painting starts melting. It's an absolutely incredible scene, one of my all-time favorite Twilight Zone scenes, and I am getting feelings going through my whole body at this point. Great direction at editing in this scene as well. So all of a sudden we go to the next scene and it's snowing outside, and I have to say this has great effect. It couldn't be more different from the last scene, so it's a great contrast. And in an amazing Twilight Zone twist, we find out that Norma has been sick and she was basically having a fever dream. It turns out Earth is actually moving away from the sun and everyone is freezing but still doomed, and all I have to say is wow. So sometimes the it's all a dream doesn't work for me, but I think it works well here because they are still basically facing the same outcome, just in a different way. And I have to say this is a great way to use this plot device, and I have to say very clever, Rod Serling. It's actually kind of hard to put into words how much this episode has impacted me. It's always one of the first Twilight Zone episodes I think of when I think of the show. There's just so much intensity here. I feel like I am there with the characters, and when an episode on TV can do that, I think that's pretty amazing. I also think this is an episode that's aged very well in some of its themes and in its style. So overall, in my opinion, The Midnight Sun is a masterpiece of television, and that is why it comes in at number 2 on the list. As always, feel free to let me know what you thought of this episode. Thank you very much for your support, and thanks for watching.